Well, how's everybody doing? Um, this past year hasn't been, but it's been amazing. Um, the higher education field probably hasn't really been either. And one thing I've been seeing is a lot of misinformation online, and I wanted to address some things. So we're just going to start with that. So I don't know which one of y'all needs to hear this. Please stop going to your college counselor and saying, "Guess what I just learned?" What? If you do this, it's your guaranteed way to get into college. No, it's not. But Mr. Swearo, I just learned it online. Where? On TikTok. TikTok is not a reputable source. Well, so there are a few things that college counselors hate. One of them is when you walk into their office and the first thing that comes out of your mouth is, "Hey, I just heard." No, don't do that. And that's kind of what I want to start off with today. There is a lot of misinformation when it comes to getting into college. And I think that people feel that if they just find something online, that it's 100% true, which isn't necessarily the case. There is a lot of information out there that's very important to learn. That's really great for first generation students. Like, I learned my fair share of things online as well. But one thing I want people to understand is that not everything you find online is correct. There are a lot of tips and tricks that people think are 100% correct only because they sound like it. And if once you do a little bit deeper of a dive, it's not quite right. So the thing about college admission is it's not a one size fits all. Everybody's college journey is a little bit different than everybody else's. And one of the most important things I think we need to realize is that just because you find something online that might sound correct or might sound comfortable, it may not be the best advice for you. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I think we need to have a chat. Being a college counselor, the amount of times that a student has come into my room and has said, "Hey, Mr. Swearo, guess what I found online? If you fudge your FAFSA, they can't do anything about it." Please don't do that. But seriously, if I had $1 for every time a student walked into my room and told me some advice they found online, I wouldn't have to do college counseling anymore. And look, I get it. Finding advice online, it can sound smart. It can sound like something that you don't know yet. But one of the issues that we have is not all advice fits everybody. In real life, some of this advice falls apart, and it does so way more than people want to admit. So today I want to talk about one of the most common pieces of college advice out there. Just go to the cheapest school. You can hear it from family members, TikTokers, people on Facebook, people on Instagram, people on Reddit, people on the street. You can find it anywhere, really. And the problem isn't that the advice is necessarily stupid or evil or anything. The problem is that it's just incomplete. And when people leave parts out of advice, students end up paying the price. Hey, that rhymes. So let's talk about just go to the cheapest school. I think people tend to push that a little harder than needs to be. While going to the cheapest school can be great, a lot of the times it doesn't quite fit what a student needs. And on the surface, I get it. The logic makes sense. College is expensive, and it keeps getting more expensive. That thing right there, my $65,000 piece of paper, it's expensive, and I get it. Student loans can be scary also. I still need to pay mine back, but don't tell anybody. So cheaper must be safer, right? And if you're a family trying to avoid debt or a student who's already stressed about money, this advice sounds great, even comforting. It can give you a really clear answer to a really overwhelming process. And I've seen many students go through that exact thing. I can see it on their faces when they walk into my office. It gives you a clear answer in a really overwhelming time. And to be honest, if I didn't know how the system worked, I'd probably believe it myself. But here's the thing when it comes to advice. It assumes a lot about your financials, your family status, your immigration status. A lot of different things are taken into account when you're applying for college. It assumes your financial aid will stay the same the entire time you're going to college. It assumes your credits will transfer cleanly. I've gone to community college before. About half of what I paid for was gone when I went to that guy. It assumes you won't need to work so much, and that won't hurt your grades. It assumes your family can help if you were to get into any trouble. And to be honest, for some students, those are true. But for most students, it's not. especially for first generation and low income students, which is what I typically work with. And this is the part a lot of people really don't like to talk about. I've seen students choose the cheaper option only to turn around and have their financial aid taken away from them only a year into their college journey. I see students choose the cheaper option only to lose their aid after 1 year because they didn't meet the requirements that weren't quite told to them. I've seen students work 25 to 30 hours a week only to be told that they're not managing their time well. I've seen students transfer and lose some of the credits that they had, and in turn, they have to spend more money in order to do more credits, which ends up becoming just a cycle that ends up spending more money. And that's the problem with some of the advice given. On paper, it looks great, but in the real world, it often leads to more troubles than anything else for students, and students end up paying the price for that. But the thing I want people to remember, this isn't about one bad piece of advice. This is honestly how the college system works for most of us. Simple advice, unfortunately, only spreads because it's easy to repeat. But unfortunately, the system itself is complicated. And when we pretend that it isn't, students end up blaming themselves. Most of the times for outcomes that were honestly pretty predictable. Students get to a point afterwards when they say, I should have known better, when in reality, someone should have explained it better. So if you're watching this as a student, right now you're probably asking yourselves, well, what should students do? What is the alternative to listening to every piece of advice that you find online? In this particular case, just chasing the cheapest option. First thing you want to do, especially with this, is you want to compare net costs to sticker price. What you pay matters a lot more than what's advertised. I can give you an example. If you buy an expensive car, you're probably going to have to pay a little bit more in maintenance than if you were to buy a cheaper car. But if somebody told you you can get away with doing cheaper maintenance on the expensive car, then that's a problem. And that's what a lot of students end up running into. The second thing that's really important that so many students, and I feel really bad after they leave, as soon as they get to college, and that second year hits, and all of a sudden everything changes. Sometimes the scholarships that you get in your first year aren't going to be the same scholarships that you get for your second. So the second thing I want you to do is ask, please ask. What happens in year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5 if possible? What happens to your financial aid? What happens to your scholarships? What happens to tuition? What happens to anything when the cost slightly goes up and your financial aid might start to decrease? Also, another thing people tend to forget is renewing your scholarships and your financial aid. Sometimes you have to reapply year after year, and a lot of times students don't know that. And so when they go to their second year, their sophomore year, and they realize that they're $5,000 short because their scholarship was only for the first year, you're in trouble at that point. And third, be realistic. Plan for the reality that you might have to work while you're in college. I know it's unfortunate, and I really don't like that this education system requires students to work and also go to school. It drives me insane, turns my hair gray, and it makes me feel bad for my kids. And I want you to think of it not in the fantasy way that it won't affect your school and you can work doing anything and just be fine. There's going to be some times when work gets in the way of school, and you have to understand that and move forward. And one thing I want you to remember, cheaper isn't necessarily bad. Buying a Corolla over a Mercedes might not be too terrible, but cheaper without context can end up being expensive. And it can be expensive in ways that no one warned you about. One of the reasons I made this channel is because too many students, I believe, are expected to navigate this with half information. And if you're watching this and you've gone through college and found advice that probably didn't work as best as you thought it could, you're not alone. And you're not a failure. And if any of this sounds familiar when you went to college or you're in college right now, drop a comment below and tell me what kind of advice that you learned about that probably wasn't the best. And if you want honest explanations about how college actually works from somebody who's been in the field, you're in the right place. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.